Now that you're starting to understand how Bootstrap works, let's go ahead and look into how we can create navigation bars, since this is something that you'll most likely want on all web pages. Using Bootstrap, you can use the navbar component to create responsive navigation headers for your websites. Bootstrap has taken care of making sure that the menu will collapse on devices that have small widths, like mobile phones, and they will use the traditional toggle button that looks like a hamburger icon. On larger devices, the menu will be horizontal in nature. And you can do all sorts of different things with navigation bars, so let's go ahead and take a look. I'll start off by creating a navigation element. In order for the navbar to work, we're going to need to add a class of navbar. Inside of the navbar, I'm going to create an unordered list. This is going to have a class of navbar-nav. The list will have li items that have a class of nav-item, and those will contain links. Inside the navbar, I'm going to create a unordered list. It needs to have a class of navbar-nav. All of the list items need to have a class of nav-item, and then within the list items, I'm going to create anchor links, and they need to have a class of nav-link. I'll go ahead and add some text. And if we go ahead and save the page and refresh in the browser, you will see that this is what the nav currently looks like. Now clearly this is not how we want the navigation to look. By default, our navigation is responsive, so it's going to show up in a vertical orientation. To change this, I'm going to come to my nav element, and we're going to add a class of navbar-expand-md. So we'll have it expand at the medium size. In addition, I'm going to use navbar-dark and a bg-dark class as well. This will make our navbar show on a dark background, and the text is going to be a gray unless we hover over, in which case it will be light. If my page gets wider, you will see that the navigation is going to change from a vertical orientation to a horizontal orientation. Many times on navigation, you're going to want to have the name of the company and/or the logo. We can add that in as well. So what I'll do is I'll come to the navigation element, and before we have our UL, we'll just create a link, and I'll just make a null link for right now. I'm going to go ahead and add a class of navbar-brand, and we'll add the name of our company. If we refresh now, you'll see that the brand element is going to appear lighter, and it will also appear a little bit larger than the rest of the content. Because I don't want my text butting right up to the edge of the page, I'm going to come to my nav element, and I'm going to add some padding to the right and the left. We'll use px-4. If we refresh now, you'll see how we get a slight indentation on the left-hand side, which is what I want. Now let's see how we can modify the menu so that we can add drop-down elements. I'll go ahead and make a drop-down menu appear underneath my tour section. We'll give this list item a class of drop-down, and then inside the A link, let's add an additional class of drop-down toggle. This is going to instruct Bootstrap to use this element as a toggle to open and close the drop-down menu. In addition to the classes, we're also going to need to add the data-bs-toggle attribute, and that is going to have a value of drop-down. And let's go ahead and put this on a separate line just so we can stay organized. After the link, let's go ahead and create our drop-down menu. I'm going to create a new list item, and this is going to have a class of drop-down menu. We'll go ahead and create some list items, and these need to have classes of drop-down-item. And inside of there, we're just going to create the anchor links and add some text. And now let's go ahead and save our page and see what it looks like. If we refresh in the browser, you're going to see that the tour area now has a little triangle, and if I click this, it's going to open up my sub menu. If you click away from the element, the menu will close. If we're on a small screen, this is what the menu is currently going to look like. So our branding element is going to appear to the left, the links will be on the right, and we can open the submenu by clicking on that particular link. Now let's go ahead and make the navbar have a collapsible hamburger menu. We'll need to add a little bit more code and some more classes. I'm going to come back to my code editor, and inside of my nav element, after we have our branding element, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a button. This is going to have a class of navbar-toggler. Inside the button, we're going to create a span element, and the span element is going to have a class of navbar-toggler-icon. In addition to these classes, I'm going to come to the button element and I'm going to add a few more attribute value pairs. The first one is going to be data-bs-toggle, and we're going to make that equal to collapse. And then we'll go ahead and we'll use an attribute of data-bs-target, and we're going to make this equal to the value of an ID. The ID that we're going to use needs to be applied to an element that will wrap around our unordered list. So I'm going to select my unordered list. I'll temporarily cut it. I'm going to create a div, and this is going to have a class of collapse and a class of navbar-collapse. We also need to give this an ID, and we'll just call it mnav for main nav. Now I'll go ahead and I'll paste my nav unordered list inside of that div, and I'm simply going to indent the code just to keep everything a little bit organized. Now that we've applied this ID of mnav, we need to make the target match that ID. So I'll go ahead and plug that value in here. We'll say hash mnav. By using the hash, we're linking this target to the ID down here. If we save our page and we refresh in the browser, you'll now see when I click the hamburger menu, it opens up and we can utilize the menu in the way that we would expect it to work. Let's go ahead and add an image-based logo to the name of our company. In order to do that, we're going to come up here to our anchor link that has the class of navbar brand, and I'm going to nest an image element inside of here. So we'll go ahead and add an image, and I have an image in my images folder called logo.svg. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. I'll apply an alt element, and we'll save this. And now if we refresh, you'll see that the logo is going to show up, and when we open this up, it's going to display. Now the logo currently is a little large, so let's reduce the size of this by applying the height attribute. And in addition to fixing it this way, you could also do it with CSS. But for right now, I'm just going to add a height, and let's give it a height of 35. I'll save, and if we refresh, you'll see that it's going to reduce the size of the logo down. I'm also going to just add a space here, just to give a little bit of space, and that'll just push the text slightly away. And now you can see what happens when we open our menu, and the logo is going to show up. If our page is large, then the branding elements are going to appear here, and then we have the nav items appearing to the right of that. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color of my navigation bar. I'm just going to use the Bootstrap light color. So I'll change both of these classes to navbar-light and bg-light. And if we refresh now, it's a very light gray color that's going to appear at the top like so. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull the links over to the right hand side. I don't really like how they're so close to the logo. And in order to do that, we're going to come to our navbar nav, so the main UL, and I'm going to add the utility class of MS-Auto. If we save and we refresh, you'll now see how the link elements are going to stay to the right and the logo will remain on the left-hand side. And at our small screen size, when we open this up, it still displays in the exact same way. As usual, you can find out more information about working with the navbar if you go to the Bootstrap documentation. Navbar is one of the components, so if you go ahead and click that, it will give you other information about how you can build navigational elements, and I would just encourage you to practice and build out your web pages and see how Bootstrap can get you up and running a little bit quicker using the navigation component.